SAGE is a 501c3 nonprofit organization building community by providing education and counseling about physical, mental, and spiritual well-being. We encourage all of our listeners to find their own path to what holistic wellness means to you. Hi, and welcome to another episode of Sage Holistic Health and Wellness Center's podcast and YouTube channel. Today, I'm so excited to have Megan Wroe here with us. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me. It's fun.
And yeah, it is fun. I'm excited to have you teach us about stuff, about nutrition, and I'm going to let you kind of just take a moment to introduce yourself.
Sure. Yeah. So my name is Megan Wroe. I'm the dietitian at St. Jude Wellness Center. So we do a huge plethora of every type of wellness service, and I do the nutrition piece of that. So I do everything from meeting with people one-on-one to more program development. So we have an anti-inflammatory eating course. So all of our courses are 6 weeks long.
Oh, awesome.
And I have one on detox that's coming up pretty soon. That'll be
wow.
new. Yeah.
Very cool.
And I do grocery tours, and we do seminars. I run a weight management program and blogging.
That's awesome.
So there's kind of a lot of little components, and we do that with our fitness team and our psychology team so that everybody has kind of a piece of wellness. And mostly I just like to make sure people are enjoying what they're eating and that it's real food. That's kind of just my passion in life, is eat real food and love it. So
that is awesome. It's so important too, because dieting can be such a thing, but it's really not about dieting. It's about just figuring it out in your diet, your regular diet.
Right. Yeah. You shouldn't be constantly on a diet plan. It's like find something that that works for you, and the foods nourish you. So
yes.
Yeah.
So today you're going to be talking to us about inflammation and the impact that inflammation has on food choices.
Yes.
So maybe you could kind of just dive in and tell us a little bit about what inflammation is, or how you would define that.
Yeah, it's really, I think, unknown. Is everyone hears this anti-inflammatory diet and you should eat anti-inflammatory, but what does that actually mean? So my best way of giving an analogy for it is to think of like a paper cut on your hand. If you were to give yourself a paper cut on accident, what happens? What's the healing process? It gets red.
Right. It hurts.
Swells. It sometimes gets worse before it gets better. It kind of oozes. It's inflammation, right? That's what we picture as inflammation. I was talking to my husband about this one time, and he just said, well, so is that what's happening on the inside? And essentially it is. So if you were just to get a little paper cut, inflammation happens. It's protective. It is our healing process. And then it heals. It goes away. And ideally, you don't even have a scar from that little paper cut. But what were to happen if you were to give yourself that paper cut, and right as it was about to heal, you paper cut it again? And then right as it was about to heal, you cut it again, and you cut it again. Eventually, it wouldn't heal. You'd just sort of always have this red, maybe raised, inflamed area that maybe just scarred and never, it was always kind of not right, or you maybe always had pain there, or the skin wasn't always right, because the inflammation was never allowed to go away. The immune system was always on guard, always working because of that cut.
Right.
That's chronic inflammation.
Okay.
So if we now apply that concept to our gastrointestinal tract, there are lots of things that can create essentially little paper cuts all the way down our gastrointestinal tract. There's little punctures in the lining. And so that can be everything from toxins and pesticides to certain types of foods to stress. Stress hormones can actually do that. Now, our body has inflammation to come to the rescue, and it'll heal. Our tissues heal every 4 to 5 days. So it's no big deal if there's little cuts and you happen to have a bag of M&Ms one day, that's okay. But it's when it's constant. You're constantly stressed. You're constantly exposed to inflammatory foods, constantly exposed to toxins and environmental triggers.
Yeah.
That cut on the inside can't heal.
Well, and you're just talking about like society, right? Yeah. I mean, this is kind of a big undertaking that you have in front of you, working with people on this.
Right. Yeah. So it's a lot to think about, and it can be overwhelming. Like, everything's creating inflammation. Yeah. But really, if we kind of just get back to basics on basic food and not all worrying about what processed food is better for me, and then that's really what the body needs, and then it can heal, and we don't have these long-term effects of inflammation within our system.
Yeah. Wow. That's it's fascinating to hear that can really
be ongoing all the time. I mean, that your body never really gets a chance to heal. And I think what struck me is that it probably takes a lot of effort and energy for your body to be coming to the aid all the time to be healing.
Yes.
And I wonder what your body would be doing with that energy if it wasn't having to heal yourself all the time.
And actually that's symptoms that people don't think about is fatigue. Or not being able to sleep so great, or kind of what a lot of people I work with say, foggy brain or foggy mind. It's like, I'm here, I'm with it, but I'm not super concentrating, or I can't always remember everything.
Right.
These things that we consider just normal because I'm busy.
Yeah.
That's not normal for the human body. And so typically it's because we're overrun, where our immune system is working so hard, like you said, to heal, that we're getting these little symptoms that we're not really paying attention to, but that's our body telling us something's going on, you need to fix me.
Yeah.
And if it goes on long enough, then we really do get diagnoses like diabetes and heart disease. And
Right.
But oftentimes those are 40 years after just having experienced these little things that we're not paying attention to.
Right. So yeah, paying attention to those things can be huge, and that awareness, like you're saying, even just knowing like that being tired could be a result of this, rather than, oh, maybe I didn't get enough sleep, or I'm just tired.
Right. Yeah. It's like, I mean, of course, you have little kids and you're running a business. Of course you're going to be tired, but you shouldn't be always so tired that you're actually having trouble with functioning day to day.
Right. Right. So where do you start then, I guess, with kind of cleaning this up, or kind of working on fixing inflammation?
Everyone's a little bit different in where we have to start. I like to hone in on the biggest trigger. Like, let's say, for instance, you're a smoker. Let's actually start there before we worry about all these other things.
Right.
Some people, while I want to target their diet, and that's my specialty, we may need to work on stress more for some people. It's just that, you can eat the best diet possible, but if you are so stressed out to the maximum and your cortisol is high, it won't really matter, because cortisol will overpower the healthy diet. So it may mean we have to pick and choose where we start.
Right. Okay. And maybe you'll get into that a little bit later too, because I'm jumping ahead wanting to have you explain to everyone what cortisol is. And
we can explain that. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, because I think that you hit on something really important, is that stress, and the idea of where do you begin, like what comes first. Definitely that's important, and working with a professional would be an awesome way to pinpoint that.
Absolutely.
But how excuse me, how can you explain stress and cortisol and all of that to our audience?
So cortisol is your stress hormone, basically. So if you're stressed out, your cortisol will go high. But I think most people don't think about stress comes from a lot of places, because people will tell me, well, I don't feel stressed, or I handle my stress really well. But this is where I bring you to, everybody hears the analogy of running away from a tiger, when you were in the Paleolithic, our ancestors. If you just ate a big meal and a tiger comes running at you, your body does not care about digesting that meal or handling the vitamins and doing, like, putting all those nutrients where it's supposed to go. Your body just needs to get up and run to survive.
Right.
So that is a cortisol spike. Cortisol gives us a boost of energy, and it shuts every other bodily process down so that you can sprint, run up a tree, get away from the tiger, and then, okay, calm down. And now all of the processes start up again. You can digest, you can start to think more clearly, and you're not in that state of anxiety. That now applied to current day, we're no longer running away from tigers, but we're sitting in traffic. We have deadlines. If you're a teenager, you have 15 different extracurriculars as well as grades due. We sometimes have jobs on the side. There's a lot of other stressors.
Right.
So even though we're not running away from a tiger, and even though you might not feel stressed, those little triggers can still increase your cortisol, and that same process is still happening.
Right.
You're still having that boost of energy. Everything else shuts down, and essentially chronic inflammation.
Right. Right. Now that's huge. And in that shutting down process, like you were saying before, having to start it all up again. Again, that takes energy to do that, to start it all up again, rather than just maintaining a homeostasis of status quo kind of regular.
Yep.
Is there regular stress?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Just a regular baseline level.
It's a little bit of stress, and that's good too. We want the ups and downs, but we don't want that chronically high stress. And like I said, that gets in the way of, if you're eating a healthy diet,
right,
you're not going to digest it very well if you're stressed.
Right.
And that can all kind of get in the way. And with the mental part, you're also not thinking clearly, because it kind of shuts down your creativity and your just focused thoughts. So that's where we get a lot of that grazing on things. You're not really making rational decisions about what you put in your mouth because you're not thinking clearly.
Right. So that brain shutting down being a symptom of inflammation. So then you're, again, not making those clear decisions.
Right.
So, wow.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
It's a lot to think about. Yeah.
It's so important to be, to be getting this information and being able to then do something with it so that, yes, maybe you can't like change it all overnight, but making at least some steps in the right direction.
Right. Yeah. So if you feel like stress is one of your major things, then maybe we need to work on breathing techniques or breathing techniques while you eat. And that, when I'm working with people with food, mindful eating is usually one of the last things I hit. But since we're talking about cortisol, we'll talk about that one first, is how to bring calmness to the table. Because maybe you do have tons of stressors around you all the time and you're really working toward it, but you're really struggling with handling your stress. But can we be calm when we eat in that moment? So prayer is one of those things that is traditionally a moment of a few moments of gratitude, of quiet, of peace. Yeah. That brings you to that moment of lower cortisol right before you eat. It also connects you to your food. So you're a bit more grateful for what you're eating. You're paying attention to what you're eating. No one's super grateful for a bag of Cheetos. It's like, but that piece of chicken that you just spent 30 minutes cooking, that I'm grateful for. So I'm going to enjoy that and eat that with more gratitude. So whether it's prayer, whether it's just a moment of deep breathing for 30 seconds. We usually say a 4 breath in and an 8 breath out. Do that 3 times. And that will automatically bring cortisol down so that at least when you're eating, you don't have a cortisol spike and you can digest that food correctly. And then we can work toward, being calm in the rest of life too. Right.
And about how long does it take to digest, if I can ask that question?
It's actually a great question. It depends on what you ate. Things that are heavier in protein and fat take a whole lot longer to digest. So a typical meal can take anywhere from 2 to 12 hours to fully digest, depending on how much is in that. I would say an average is probably 2 to 4 hours.
Okay. Yeah. Well, that's good to know. Yeah, because it's like just trying to keep things kind of mellow for that period of time at least.
Exactly. Yeah.
But yes, we are usually like eating and rushing off to the next thing, so that mindful eating can be really important. Yeah. I wish I could remember this. There was, I don't know if it's from a certain religious tradition like Buddhism or something, but where it's a prayer where you kind of like have a prayer where you thank all the places that this food came from to get to your table. I don't know if you've heard of that.
I don't know exactly where it came from either, but I love that.
I know. I'll have to look that up. I'll put it. I'll include it too. But these are some great ideas for what people can do, like what you're saying, the gratitude or the prayer, just taking that moment to really calm down and
or imagine where it came from. That's actually something in a lot of Michael Pollan's books. Pretty much all of them. He talks about just recognize where your food came from and picture it. Just take a moment in your head and visualize, where did the apple come from? Did it come from a tree? Who picked it? Right. How did it get to your plate? Right. And if you're eating pancakes, think about all the ingredients in there. How did the flour get in it? How did the eggs? And again, if you're eating Cheetos, where did they come from? And that can completely change your appetite and your readiness for that food.
Yeah, that's true.
So it brings a lot of, let's get more connected to that. Let's get cooking. Let's get actually like in touch with our food.
Yes, I love that. Really great points. Yeah. I wanted to have you talk a little bit about a plant-based diet. I know that that's been something that comes up a lot, and I wonder, does that mean that we all should be vegan, or where do you come up with your place on this?
Yeah, and there's a huge spectrum, and I think nowadays plant-based has turned into vegan. That term, if you say plant-based, most people are talking about either vegan or maybe vegetarian, but like no animal meat. But really, if you think of the word plant-based, it means based on plants. So there's room for animal in there, depending on your own desires. But plant-based to me does not have to mean you get rid of all animal food ever. It just means that majority of your intake, like more than 3/4 of your intake, is plant food. And it doesn't have to mean only vegetables either. Think of everything that comes from plants, from beans and lentils and strawberries and quinoa. So all these things are really great because they help bring down inflammation. So plants have antioxidants, which that antioxidants are the opposite of those free radicals that create inflammation. So they go and they kind of quench the inflammatory fire. If there's little fires popping up, they kind of like sit on top of it.
Oh, awesome.
So antioxidants are just prevalent in plant food. They're the color.
Mm-hmm.
So the purples are certain types of antioxidants, and the reds are certain types, and the blues are certain types. So the more colorful plant food has, the more nutrition. They have tons and tons of fiber. So the more fiber we eat, the healthier we are. All the research shows that.
Yeah.
Really, we should be getting 25 to 38 grams of fiber a day, and most Americans get an average of 14.
Oh, wow.
So
that's a big difference.
Yeah, that's a big difference. So that helps with our digestion. So it helps us to eliminate a lot of those toxins
like
that
to
we're
move
trying to
things
get out.
Through your gastrointestinal tract.
Yeah, that's a big piece of it that we don't think about is we got to get it out. If we ate or were exposed to certain toxins, we got to get them out of the system.
Right.
So fiber helps with that. It also kind of grabs onto things that our body doesn't want, like excessive cholesterols or sugars or fats, and it kind of bundles them up and helps you eliminate them. So fiber is really great for that. So, and just all of your vitamins and minerals are the most prevalent in plant foods.
Oh, awesome.
So, and then they're just better for the environment, especially nowadays when we're not feeding our animals very well. So plant-based means if you're looking at your plate or your bowl or your whole day or your shopping cart, most of it should be plants.
Right.
And then where's the rest of it? Maybe it's all plants if you're really leaning toward a vegetarian diet, but maybe there's some animal meats in there too. And then when you do choose animals, they should be eating a plant-based diet. So that's a big piece.
Say more about that. I mean, because there is so much controversy, I think, in, about where is our food actually coming from and kind of false advertising and all of that. So what is it that you look for, that you teach your students to look for?
Yeah, so you want your animal, because you are what you eat, and so you are what that animal ate. So if the animal is eating a diet that I wouldn't recommend for you to eat, they're going to have inflammation, and they're going to have inflamed meat that you eat. So you want to be eating an animal that's eating this natural diet, which is pretty much plants, but certain types of plants. So cows being a biggie. Cows don't have the digestive enzyme for corn. They cannot break it down. That's mostly what they're fed in conventional factory farms, which to us seems like, well, who cares? It's just corn. Corn's a plant, right? But they aren't able to break it down. So it just sort of sits in their stomach and ferments. And that's where you get things like E. coli and all these nasty bugs. So it's not, they have to be eating the food that they're supposed to be eating. So on labels and when you're talking to your butcher or you're at your farmer's market, you want to be hearing key phrases like grass-fed. So beef and any four-legged animal really needs to be grass-fed or pasture-raised. Those are they mean the same thing. Sometimes you might see the word pastured. Basically think of out in the pasture. So it's different than pasteurized. I think there's a lot of confusion there, but pastured is they're out in the pasture eating grass, eating bugs, eating dirt. Our version of spinach, probiotics, and protein, basically. So that means that animal is going to be a very healthy, lean animal. So grass-fed, pasture-raised, pastured. So that goes for all of your eggs, too. Actually, finding pasture-raised eggs is really easy now. They're at most grocery stores.
Pastured eggs or pasteurized eggs?
Pasture-raised or pastured, yes.
Yeah, I do see how that gets a little confusing.
It does, yeah. Pasteurized means that they were heated to get rid of the bacteria. So that's a completely different process.
Completely different,
Pastured or pasture raised in the pasture.
Okay.
So
for chickens too then.
So poultry, beef, pork, lamb, eggs, anything that is a red meat, that's really the thing you're looking for. All the research shows that the nutrition is different. So if you take a grass-fed steak versus a conventional steak, your grass-fed is lower in saturated fat, lower in cholesterol, higher in vitamin D, higher in vitamin A, higher in omega-3s.
Wow.
So
truth is in the numbers.
It is.
That's really amazing.
Yeah, it's not just theory of, they should be eating that. I mean, really, it shows. And when it comes to fish, same thing, but the term is wild. So it should be eating its natural diet of kelp, seaweed, and algae, which is out in the wild. Also, just because a lot of fish farmers are starting to realize that fish are becoming extinct, some fish farmers are raising their fish sustainably. So if you see the little term sustainably raised, it's the same thing as wild. It's a really good thing that's happening. And you can see that like in Trader Joe's, they have the 2 packs of salmon now that are right next to each other. One's farm raised and one's wild. And the wild one is bright pink red, and the other one is kind of like pale. You can see that color.
And they don't put dyes and things like that in the fish, or
I guess they could, but
Probably
they would have to
not if
list
it's-
that
yeah.
on the ingredients,
Right.
and they wouldn't in a wild
Yeah.
because it's naturally that
Right.
way.
Not
Yeah.
the wild one, I guess. I think like you hear about different things that can be in these meats
Sure.
that people add in.
Oh yeah, if it's
Or
just a
fish.
conventional with no label on
Yeah.
it, there's really not a lot of regulation. So, but
Right.
they do have to label ingredients. So
Uh-huh.
if you're ever wondering, like, I wonder if they colored this one,
Right.
you could look at the ingredients and
Uh-huh.
see.
Okay.
Yeah.
And are there different grocery stores that you recommend that have more options for that? I know you mentioned Trader Joe's, but I mean, can people get these types of foods in any regular grocery store, or do they need to go to a more specific grocery store like Sprouts or Trader Joe's or something?
Well, so every grocery store now has some.
Mm-hmm.
I'm finding that even like Stater Brothers and Ralph's, they have these little sections now. So some demand is coming. In fact, there's lots of pasture raised eggs in the basic grocery stores now too. You're going to get a lot more variety at more of your specialty stores.
Okay.
So even Trader Joe's, until probably the last year, didn't have a whole lot of options, but they're starting to. They have now 3 types of grass-fed meat, and they don't quite have pastured eggs or poultry yet, but I think that's probably up and coming. They have multiple types of wild fish. Sprouts has quite a few. Mother's Market, Whole Foods, they have tons.
Yeah.
Costco has quite a bit now.
Wow, interesting.
They kind of have a mix of both.
Yeah.
So I'm seeing it more and more and more. But again, if you want a big variety, you kind of got to go to the multiple markets. Farmers markets are great.
Yeah.
So I know for us locally, the Orange Farmers Market on Saturday mornings has this huge grass-fed truck of pretty much anything you could possibly want, from
great.
jerky to bones for bone broth.
Uh-huh.
So
Oh, that's awesome.
yeah.
That's a whole other topic.
Oh, I know.
Bone broth. But what is the price point? I know that kind of comes up a lot. I'm just kind of thinking in my own head what I've heard and for myself too, looking at the price differences. So can you really put a price on it? You know, I'm hearing so many benefits that are long term. I mean, it might not be something you notice right away, but it's the long term chronic inflammation that comes up. So what would you say to that if someone's thinking, great, all of this is awesome, but it's like double the cost or whatever? Sure. I don't know how much more it is.
It
like
definitely
price
is
comparing.
more because of the labor put into it. If you think about what it takes to raise a cow grass-fed and have to wrangle it back in at night and put it into different pastures versus just keep it in a stall and that's where it lives and you just feed it basically ruminants of anything. Even Skittles. I just read that recently.
Oh no.
Skittles poor cows. So that's why it's so much more expensive. It's not because it's healthy. It's because there's a lot of process going into it. So one recommendation is go to the places that have more options, the ones that I just mentioned, because they're able to buy more.
Okay.
They can actually charge less. So you'll notice eggs, especially at places like Sprouts, they almost always have one that's on sale for pretty much the same cost as a regular egg because they have so many to choose from.
Yeah.
Versus Ralph's is like, the same brand is actually usually $1 or $2 more.
Yeah.
Just because they can't buy as many. So places that can buy wholesale can sell it for less. Same thing with Costco. So start there, and then 2, recognize how much of your diet is made up of that. If you love meat and that is a food in your diet on a regular basis, mostly plants, still meat, then your meats should be high quality. If that's a staple ingredient in your diet, you need to treat it as such, and that should be nourishing you. If once in a while you're eating some chicken or something and it really isn't very often, and you happen to be at this one store, you don't want to drive all over town, they don't have it, or it's $5 more,
right,
your body's gonna be fine. I mean, we have pathways to deal with those things, especially if you are eating mostly plants and healthy foods on a regular basis. You go to a friend's house, you have no idea if they bought good meat or not. Like, don't get too wrapped up in that. If your once in a while meats are just conventional, your body can handle it. But if it's on a regular basis, there is a price on that.
Yeah, good point. Yes. And so with the plants too, I don't know if we talked about this, like how you choose plants and you know, kind of what the labels should read on plants as well.
There's a lot of controversy, and to be honest, I don't even know that I have a definite answer because I feel like the research is constantly changing. So what we know is that non-organic foods have much higher levels of pesticides and toxins and fertilizers in them, and we know that creates inflammation.
Yeah.
However, on the opposite side is that there's not as much regulation as you would actually hope for on the organic side. There still can be some synthetic things that are added to organic products. Organic products can still be packaged up in plastic and shipped all over the country. So organic is not the be all end all, but it's kind of the best we have right now as far as getting rid of the toxins.
Yeah.
So one thing that you can use is the Environmental Working Group. They have a website called ewg.org.
Okay.
They also have an app, which is super cool.
Oh, neat.
And they do research every year on what plants have the highest level of toxins and which ones have the lowest. And so they call it the Dirty Dozen and the Clean 15. So the Dirty Dozen are the 12 foods that year that you really probably should eat organic because they're pretty toxic. And then the Clean 15 are kind of, okay, don't waste your money here.
Right.
Don't worry about it.
Right.
And all that being said, if you really can't afford the organic or you live next to a market that doesn't have very much, tons and tons and tons of plants are still giving you all those other benefits. Yes, we might be getting toxins and pesticides, which we don't want, but you're still getting the antioxidants, and you're still getting the fiber, and you're still getting the vitamins and minerals. So don't just think, oh, I can't afford organic, so I'm just going to get a bunch of processed foods instead. I'd still promote just at least get the vegetables and the plants.
Yeah, no, I like how you do that. I mean, it's like you just break this down, and you don't always have to shoot for doing everything perfectly. Right. It's just being able to make some choices that could be a little bit better than the bag of Cheetos.
Exactly.
Or the Skittles, something like that.
Exactly. Just know what's realistic for you. And like I said, sometimes people get overwhelmed because that means that they're going from store to store to store and they're doing all these things, and it's like, okay, calm down, let's go to one store that can mostly fit your needs. And if that day they don't have organic asparagus and asparagus is on your meal plan for the week, get regular asparagus. We will be fine. So
right. So just helping people. I mean, that kind of brings up the topic of moderation. And are we doing this in moderation, or does it have to be full bore? So what would you say to someone about does everything have to be in moderation?
Yeah. It's funny. I'm on the lookout for a word other than moderation. That's like my life goal.
Is that not a good word for you?
I love the idea of everything in moderation because it's true, but I think that's also an excuse for people is, everything in moderation, right? As though we're eating our nachos. I just don't know like an in-between because it is true that we want to be having everything in moderation, but that's not a reason to just go eating anything and everything.
Yeah.
But yes, be somewhat moderate and know that it's okay to have a piece of chocolate cake and it's okay to have a bag of Skittles once in a while, but it really is once in a while. And when I work with people one-on-one, we're looking at their food journals, I had that bag of M&Ms, or I had that bag of Cheetos, or we had a hot dog, but I never have that. I'm like, okay, but let's write it down. And every day there's something that I never have or that I rarely have. So is it a daily occurrence?
Right. So what is once in a while? What would be Megan's definition of a while?
It just depends on what food we're talking about. I guess I would say if 75% of your meals are real food, I'm not so worried about the 25%. Or some people say 80-20. So like the 80-20 rule is Hari Hachibu is the phrase of 80% is just wholesome and 20% is party. We all need a little bit of party, So 20% if you want to think of it that way instead of putting it like how many days a week number, I think it's a good thing. And the more real food you eat, the more you're just cooking simple basic stuff, the less you even have to worry about moderation. The less you have to worry about like, is this a higher sodium product or a higher fat product or sugar product? It's like if you're eating mostly real foods, then you're automatically once in a while when you go to a party or you have some sort of event, that is going to be 20%. You don't have to be thinking so much about it.
Yeah, I think it's a good point, though, that I think our society and just our culture tends to have quite a few social parties, or engagements or just get-togethers where there are not a lot of good food choices. So I guess if you're going out like 5 times a week to like some sort of a social gathering, which I think a lot of people do, like maybe, even 3 times a week. Does that really, I guess you have to calculate it out, how many meals a day you're eating, and then how, where that comes up with the 80-20 or 75-25.
That's such a good point, is that we do party more than we ever used to. So what is 20%? And what I usually tell people is how important is this celebration? Like, there's always a work party in an office space. Oh, yeah. Always.
Birthday parties
for kids. So consider, when the cake is there or the pizza is there, is this an important aspect of your life?
Mm-hmm.
You're there to celebrate something. Is it like your coworker's birthday who you barely know and someone brought in pizza and donuts? Is that impactful for you and meaningful?
Yeah.
Or is it your birthday or your mom's birthday and your mom made your favorite cake from when you were a kid?
Yeah.
That's an important cake to spend on. Not the Ralph's boxed thing that someone brought in from the office because it was on sale.
Right.
So that brings you back to being mindful of how important is this celebration of food, and also be mindful and project yourself. Look back. So imagine yourself tomorrow waking up and looking back on today. Will you regret having not participated in that food?
Right.
Or will you think like, oh, I actually totally forgot that was even there.
Right. Oh, yeah. What was that cake or thing that they had? Right. It wasn't that important. It's just one of those mindless eating things.
Exactly.
Yeah, but I like that. Prioritize the party. You know, you really
That's a great
have
phrase.
to decide, okay, how important is this party to me in the grand scheme of things? Or thinking ahead, like what's on your social planner that week, and say, oh, I have this today, but, you know, this weekend is my best friend's birthday, so I'm going to save my party for that weekend, you know, my party food.
Exactly. And what's great too is whether you're going out to a restaurant or eating in, there's a lot more options now. Most restaurants have something that is more wholesome to order from, depending on where you're going, of course. But I would say there's always a way to modify an order. I mean, even at McDonald's, there are ways to have a better meal, even if it's not the best healthy meal.
Yeah.
And then if you're going to someone's house, bring something. Every host loves to have something contributed, or call and ask, hey, would you like it if I brought a dish, and bring a dish that you feel comfortable with?
Yeah.
And that way that can fill most of your plate, your 80%, and then put the 20% of little bites of everything else.
Right. That's some great tips. I think that's really helpful for someone like kind of trying to plan ahead. But there is some planning ahead about it.
There is.
I mean, you really kind of have to put some thought into eating good nutrition and kind of creating this life.
To this day, I mean, this is my profession, and I will look up restaurant menus before I go. If my friend calls me and we're going to XYZ place, I'll look up that place and I will peruse it first and decide in my head before I go what I'm going to be ordering. Because it's just too easy to show up and be surprised, and you're hungry and everyone else is ordering this one thing and you just dive in. If you know what you're doing ahead of time, it takes 5 seconds. Everybody has a smartphone now. Yeah. I mean, we can look these things up. So
yeah. Oh, that's so great.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I'm trying to think about what else we can kind of go over today. I mean, with snacking, how would you tell us what we could do about snacking? Any guidelines for that?
Yeah, so I'm going to refer back to Michael Pollan. Michael Pollan's food rules, everybody needs to read that because it's just perfect. And
we'll include that in the show notes. Yeah.
One of his rules that I apply, like, kind of resonates with me, and that's what you should do when you read it, is pick some rules that resonate with you and don't just think the whole book has to be true. But one of them that I really like is snack foods should be real food. So like chips and crackers and cookies and sodas, these are not nourishing foods. Yeah. That's what we think of as snacks, and that's usually one of the biggest complaints people come to me is, what am I supposed to snack on? You're supposed to snack on apples and almond butter and celery and walnuts and pieces of turkey and cheese, but not processed stuff. So as far as snacks go, what's a real food you can grab? Be it a fruit, a vegetable, a protein, a fat, avocado. Get some bell peppers and dip it in mashed up avocado. That's guacamole. Yum. So it doesn't have to be. It's actually much simpler when you think of it that way. It's just that we have to kind of change that on its head.
That would be a good. That's a hard thing to shift when someone's used to just kind of grabbing what they've always thought of as snack foods.
Right. And again, it takes a little prep. You have to cut your celery up ahead of time. But a big recommendation I have for people is when you go to the grocery store on the weekend, have an hour when you get home. Do not go shopping unless you know you have an hour when you get home to chop everything. And just put it, even if you don't know what you're going to be eating it for, you don't have to do a whole meal plan. Just slice up those bell peppers, slice up the carrots, chop up everything so that it's easy to grab, otherwise you won't eat it. Especially if you're not used to it.
Right. No, that's a good point, though, to have an hour when you get home. I mean, that definitely can take up a good chunk of your time if you're not going to have that.
Oh, sure. And the more you do it, the faster it goes. You don't really need an hour usually, but if you're brand new to it, save that time. If you have kids at home, make them help you. Get everybody on board and have those ready. Yeah. But there's a lot of stuff that's easy. Hard-boiled eggs, nuts and seeds. I always have a bag of walnuts in my purse, just
Just
have.
in case, yeah.
Or pumpkin seeds are yummy, and there's lots of things that are still pretty shelf stable.
Yeah. And what about, I'm thinking of roasting nuts. Like, is that, when you roast nuts, does it really take away the good stuff out of them?
It doesn't take, it takes a little bit out. Anytime you cook anything with heat, it will take some of the nutrients out. It's very minimal unless you are like boiling the vegetable to a pulp or frying up those nuts.
Yeah.
It's very minimal. The thing with nuts is that they are made of fat, and so fats exposed to heat will start to break down and turn essentially rancid.
Oh, okay.
That is a slow process, and it has to be very, very high heat for a long amount of time, and then they have to sit for a long amount of time. So if you're roasting them, usually nuts take like 6 minutes before they turn black. So it's not very long time, and if you eat that over the course of a week, it's not something to worry about.
Right.
But roasted nuts from Costco in the gigantic containers, I have no idea how long those were roasted for or how long ago. So I usually buy your nuts raw and then roast them yourself, and then it's great.
Yeah. Healthy little snacks.
Oh yeah, and you can mix up the flavors and make them really yummy. Kind of go savory with like curry powder, or go sweet with cinnamon.
Yeah.
So.
Do you have like guidelines on like quantities, or is that something you do with people when you work with them individually? It kind of like goes into how much they weigh or how tall they are, and then kind of figuring out people's meal portions and all of that.
Oh yeah. It's not as mathematical as you'd think unless you are like an athlete who needs a very specific amount of calories for this very specific amount of activity that they're doing. Like you and I are different heights and weights, but we pretty much need the same thing. And kids need a lot less than us, but it's not a matter of you specifically need X amount more calories than I do.
Right.
Really, we're looking at portions of things. So half cup is a general good portion, which is about as much as you could like cup into your hand of most things. So half a cup of blueberries, half a cup of carrots all chopped up, half a cup of beans. Those are typically good portions. Vegetables, I'm usually kind of doing this because we tend to underestimate our vegetables.
Yeah.
Proteins that are meats, more of like the palm of your hand, so that's 3 to 4 ounces, and then your fats are all going to vary depending on the fat itself, so it's like a quarter of an avocado or a quarter cup of nuts, but in general that's like if you were to squeeze your hand really tightly together, how many could fit in there. So you're looking at, I don't know, 10 to 15 nuts kind of thing, if you want to look at it that way.
Yeah.
So.
Awesome. Thank you for that. That's good guidelines, I think, for people to get started on. And I'm just thinking for someone who's trying to do something new and make a big shift, is that going to be a challenge? I think portion sizes and all of that in our culture are huge. So I guess what would you say to someone who's trying to make that jump to going to the half cup and being like,
so first of all, buy smaller plates. Right? Because our plates are so big now. And when I got married a few years back, we got these brand new plates for our wedding, and we moved into a house that was built in the 60s, and I put them away, and I couldn't close the cupboards because our plates are so big now. I mean, it's crazy. That's my favorite story of how portions have increased.
Right.
So buy smaller plates, buy smaller bowls, and then for a while, measure things out and see how they look in your plates and bowls, because it's going to differ, and depending on that size, it can be really easy to over or underestimate things. Like, that's about a half a cup.
Right.
So take a half cup and put it on and see what does half a cup of that food look like. Because then every single time you cook, you don't have to do this, but when you're using a new food or a new dish, get that eyeball and then fill in any white space with vegetable so that you always have a full dish. Play those mind tricks. So if you have to have a gigantic salad or you need way more broccoli than you ever would have thought before, just fill in the space, because your mind will think, okay, good,
I'm getting a whole
meal.
plate. Yeah.
And always make sure you have enough protein and fat. I think that's a biggie too. When people try to eat healthy, they don't bring in enough of the proteins and fats because they think of those as unhealthy foods. And those are the things that keep you full. So if you just have some rice and vegetables, like a little bit of beans, that won't fill you. So you will automatically not be happy and satisfied with that meal.
Right.
So make sure you get some avocado with that, or a big enough portion of the beans. And it is a half cup. If you need to double something, double the protein or the fiber, and don't necessarily double the processed carbs on that dish.
Oh, there's so much there, like trying to put it all into. And I bet it's so helpful for people to have you to kind of work with side by side and kind of be their cheerleaders to help them kind of get on track.
It's nice to talk to someone. And like I said, I'm very food focused. So it's not about let's cut this and this and this. It's what foods do you like? How do we bring those in and incorporate that?
To make it so it can be enjoyable and palatable.
Yeah. Yeah, we actually do cooking classes at the Wellness Center too.
Oh,
so
neat.
that's fun too, is to actually just see what foods taste good. And inevitably, I would say most people leave a class saying, well, I'm gonna make this now.
Yeah.
And they may not have, I just handed them a recipe. So also just big piece of advice for anyone listening is find someone that you can cook with.
Yeah.
If you're not super comfortable cooking just by yourself.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what would be some good like tips and tricks on like healthy, easy meals or something like that for you to maybe share with our listeners today?
Yeah. So some favorite breakfast hard-boiled eggs. Or just make a big batch or buy them pre-hard boiled. You can do that now.
I don't know if they're pasture.
I don't think Costco ones are, but Sprouts has pasture raised.
They do.
Hard-boiled eggs. So get those and have like a piece of fruit with it. And that could literally be something you eat on the run, even though that's not being mindful, that is something you eat on the run.
Flexible.
Exactly. Or egg muffins are a big trendy thing now, where you put a bunch of veggies and basically whisk your egg and pour it into an egg tin or a muffin tin.
Yeah.
And they'll last all week. And
That's
you can just grab those and eat them. So those are really great things. Chia pudding is another one of my favorite things. Or you can also add some oats if you're not super into just the chia. But let them soak in almond milk overnight, and then add your fruit and maybe a little dollop of almond butter, and it's a really yummy kind of parfait bowl.
That's awesome.
So,
we'll put these on the show notes.
Yes.
You don't have to remember it all or write
we'll
it
have
down.
Recipes.
Yeah, no, that's great.
So those are some good breakfasts. Lunches, I'm a big fan of leftover lunches. So instead of having to think of the entire week of lunches and the entire week of dinners, plan on making double as much dinner as you would have otherwise, and immediately pack up like half of it for lunches for everybody who's in the house.
Great idea. Yeah.
And that way it's just quick and easy. But you can make things ahead of time. Salads are great for that because you can just keep the dressing separate, or quinoa bowls. If you have beans and quinoa and some sort of dressing with your vegetables, mix those all up together.
Yeah.
Those are great. But as far as dinner is really kind of focusing on the easy stuff. So for instance, you can get frozen bell peppers and onions, saute them up in like some taco seasoning, add a can of black beans and some avocado and some quinoa, and you have fajita.
Yum. Yeah, that sounds great.
That's something you can have on hand at all times.
Yeah.
Another one of my favorite, just easy ones, is if you have a crock pot, put your chicken and a can of coconut milk in a crock pot, let it simmer all day, and also before you run off to work, have your have like a cabbage slaw, so you can buy them pre-slawed, you don't even have to chop it. Toss it up with some soy sauce and olive oil and lime juice, and when you get home, that cabbage has softened and it has all those yummy flavors, and you put that coconut chicken on top of it. It's all creamy, and that's a dish. That's a meal. You can have it with a corn tortilla or with some fruit if you need something a little extra for starch.
That is great.
That's a great one. There's bean pastas now that are available, so instead of just wheat pasta or white pasta, you can get pasta made out of chickpeas or out of black beans or edamame.
I haven't tried those yet.
And that's your protein right there now. So your pasta is now your protein. You get like 8 grams of fiber and 12 grams of protein with these things. They cook super fast. Have that with a tomato sauce and a salad.
That's awesome.
Or toss it with some pesto sauce to mix it up and add a little bit of chicken in there, and have that with roasted vegetables.
Sounds good.
It's yummy. We're actually having that tonight. We're having rotini, that's black bean from Trader Joe's. They have that. And they have that big kind of just chopped up veggie blend in the refrigerated section that's already cut for you. So I'm going to mix all of that up together with some leftover chicken from last night and Italian dressing. It's like a cold pasta salad.
Yum.
So
well, you got some good ideas. Thank you so
you're
much
welcome.
for sharing these. This is great.
It's fun. And just think more ingredient meals rather than these complex recipes.
Yeah. And then just kind of planning ahead for it. When do you typically do your meal planning? It sounds like you meal plan.
Yes.
Yeah.
You've got to. You have to meal plan. So when I'm looking ahead at my weekend, I know, we've got family stuff and I'm really busy this weekend. I'm only going to make it to one market. I will then plan my week ahead from there, knowing that maybe I can only make it to Trader Joe's. Okay, great. I'm going to make some Trader Joe's meals. So you have to get to know your markets too. And then you plan for that 1 or 2 breakfasts and a meal every night, and maybe it's just double those dinners, and you plan to pack the lunches, shop on the weekend, and do your prep. So it doesn't have to be everything, but chop your vegetables and anything that needs a little bit of extra time, like maybe if you're making a sauce or if you're making meatballs, do that. So that way when you get home, you should be able to set yourself up for every night is a 30-minute meal or less.
That's awesome.
So you can just throw things together. And then just have your pantry stock too, like I said, with canned beans and sauces and frozen veggies. That way if life doesn't work out, you can still throw something together.
Some backup plans.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So,
Very cool. So good tips. I wonder if there's some other things we haven't chatted about that you think are really important to share about nutrition. I think water was one thing that kind of comes up a lot, and I love how you had put in your blog post that it's going to be posted that drink water like it's your job.
Drink it like it's your job, because it is in fact your job. It is your responsibility to your body to fuel it, and water fuels. It pushes things around. If you think about it, blood is made of water. Yeah. So if we don't have enough water, we're not actually pushing our blood to our brain and to our toes and to our organs where it needs to be. Mm-hmm. So we might not be feeling dehydrated per se, but we might again have that foggy brain or have tightness in our joints, or our liver might not be working to its optimum, and we're not eliminating those toxins if we're not getting enough water. So it's your responsibility and your job to your body to give it what it needs, and that's water.
Yeah. I think you said too in your blog something about it getting sticky and kind of like things not kind of moving through or getting clots even.
Yeah. Do you remember those like glitter sticks that would go like this? Think of that as your blood. So all the little glitters, that's the sugars and the salts and the fat particles. We have particles that move around through our blood. So if there's not enough liquid in there, it gunks up, right? And then you tip it and all the glitter is still up there at the top. It can get sticky with those sugars and those fats if there's not enough water to push it through. And those stickiness clog the arteries, and that's where we get what's called plaque. Yeah. So we don't want sticky blood. We want nice, thin, moving, flowing blood.
Right. And water can do so much for that. I mean, that's like you said, the main job of it.
Yeah, absolutely. So. And you don't have to drink just plain water. Put berries in it. Put cucumbers. Put lemon in your water. Mint. Make it flavorful. You can drink carbonated water. But water.
Yeah. Lots of water.
Yeah.
So where can people find you, Megan, in the community and learn more about what you do, and even, look you up for support?
So my main area of residence is the St. Jude Wellness Center, and that's in Brea, California. So you can find me there, and that's where I do most of my programs. But I also do a lot of work just on social media where I'm posting all the time. So my main area is Instagram, and that's RD Megan. So RDMEGAN. And awesome. I post food almost every day, and the whole point of it is to give you ideas, to give you inspiration, and I'll put the little what's on there, and feel free to message me there if you don't know what I meant by a certain food. So that's the main place for that. And then at St. Jude, stjudewellnesscenter.org is the website, and I do blog there as well.
Oh, so awesome.
The main places to find me.
Well, thank you so much. This has been a lot of great information. I feel like I've learned something, and I certainly hope that our listeners have learned something too.
Thanks for having me. It was super fun.
Yes, I can see how passionate you are about helping people get connected to their food. So thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you for spending some of your time today with us at Sage Holistic Health and Wellness Center. If you like what we're all about, please consider supporting our nonprofit organization by making a tax-deductible donation. To do this, you can go to our website at www.sagewellnessctr.org and click on Donate in the upper right-hand corner. We look forward to spending some time again with you real soon. Take good care.